Welcome to another episode of the Friendly Palestinian podcast. I have my guest with me here, Alessandro Viola, and I'm so excited to have this interesting conversation with him. It's been long overdue, honestly. Welcome, Alessandro.
Thank you, Bashar.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Everything's fine. Can you tell our listeners more about you, a background basically on who you
Yeah.
are, what you're doing here, and where you're going next?
So I came to the Emirates 1 year and 1 month ago, and I'm leaving very soon, actually, in 5 days, 6 days. And um, well, I came here to work in arts and music because that's what I do. I work in a music industry, and I worked a bit in the marketing and in operations, but my main focus is operations and everything that is digital, basically. I I studied music for many years, classical music. I got a bachelor in percussions, and and after that I studied a bit of musicology, and I moved more on the theory side. But at the same time, since I'm a child, like I always um grew up a passion, a big passion for everything that is digital and IT, informatics in general, data. In the past few years, like I focused a lot on data, especially operation-wise, how to work with data, how to store them, how to manipulate them, and how to get useful insights from them. And of course, then there is all the part like related to that. That is like about like how data are changing the world today. And uh, let's say I'm not the most expert person in the world, but I have to deal with that daily, and I really like what I do. So yeah, I made it my passion, and I made out of my passion my work as well.
Usually, the world in general has this view on people who work with data and people who work on the back end of things, like how to deal with data, how to manage it, and how to analyze it, and how to present it and put it in charts and all of that, as someone as a nerd, not someone who's creative. You know what I mean? So basically, you seem to be more the creative person who works with data creatively. So how has music influenced your approach on data analysis and data presenting?
So actually, that's a good question because I think there is a lot in common between data and music. So both are about math, and math somehow is the thing that can theoretically represent anything, and music is a lot about math. Like
Really?
there is a lot of mathematics in music, in uh, starting from the structure of music, uh, like how actually is the architecture of a piece, the tempo. The tempo is basically time, and is measured like mathematically. That's also why when you're a child, like it's very difficult to understand music theory at the beginning, because if you can't do fractions, if you can't like do calculations, it's challenging to understand like proportions and this kind of things. So I would say like there is a lot of math inside music, and also like music gives you a different way of thinking about thing, a different approach, because it's something in between of like mm, let's say a more uh, theoretical work, but also very physical. So there is like it coexists. Um, it coexists like two dimensions, and one part is like about like doing things, like it can be a sportive person, but at the same time there is like a lot of theoretical study, like can be someone who studies literature. So music is like a lot of things all together, and then it's nice what it gives you, and it gives you like more flexibility in your brain, in the way you think. So it's like it helped a lot somehow.
So being in music and being having this passion for music helped you a lot in actually going into data and analyzing it and finding ways to manage and store this data for other people who struggle with managing it.
Yeah, let's say that, but also the background I had in architecture.
You
So
also had a background in
yeah,
architecture.
I worked as a building designer for a few years
Wow, that's interesting.
before switching full time for the music industry in the management.
What was your parents' opinion on you shifting from a career like architecture into music?
They were super positive. They always supported me in studying music, and I think this is very important because for some people, sometimes like studying music is like losing time because it's not something profitable in the short term.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is definitely not true, because like, of course, only the, I don't know, I'm just like hypothetically, the 5% of people who study music, like they
The top
they become,
musicians
yeah, top musicians. Like they can actually
earn a
live,
living. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
out of their job. But there is a lot to do into music, and as much as me that like to organize concert, you need a full organization and a lot of people like sitting on a desk and uh,
Yeah.
organizing actually the things.
Yeah.
And then there are people who do like they do musicology, so critics. And then there are people. This is more for classical music, but is also true for pop music. Like
Yeah.
just think about the magazine Rolling Stones. A lot of journalists working just to write about music. So there is a lot to do in music. And what I decided to do in music was to bring together IT and music and to work in the intersection of the two things, because those are my two passions. And so I wanted to do something that I felt kind of special.
That's very, very interesting that you try to merge between your passions and create something really nice and beautiful in between these two very different worlds in people's opinion. Because when someone looks at music, they look at the creativity, they look at something musical, something you can listen to, but you see what others don't see maybe in this field, where you can actually merge between the two things.
Yeah, there is creativity in working with data. Like when you design a system, you have to be creative. When you design a user interface or a user experience, also if you don't design, if you use like, as I do most of the time, like no code tools, like low code tools. So there are like predefined blocks to use. So there is not much about like design and that part of creativity, but the creativity is in the architecture of like a system, for example. So deciding how all the data moves inside a space and try to find like creative solutions to solve actual problems.
And luckily for you, you also have experience in architecture, although it might be
Yeah,
distantly unrelated.
but it's not, because like designing a system, for example, for data, uh, it's of course like very different from designing a building. But like when you gain experience like designing buildings, so doing like projects for constructions, you must have a methodology. You
Yeah.
must have a methodology. So the methodology I learned in the project management, especially while I was working in architecture, helped me a lot, like in doing my job now, because architecture is something really, let's say, old, like that we do since ever, since the human
Yeah. The
is
dawn
on
of
Earth.
civilization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's something we refined and made almost perfect in his process. So there are like tons of books on how to manage buildings construction. And so when you study building constructions and you take the same concepts
Or
and you move
approach,
them, or
maybe.
approach, yeah, and you move them on another sector or any sector, is very beneficial, because you have a method, and that's something really important to find.
That's very interesting. So, another question I wanted to ask you is what's your next step for now? Where are you going? Where are you headed? What are you going to be doing?
So I'm moving to Paris very soon, and I really look forward to it, because it's not the first time I will be living in Paris, and I already know I love it. And um, and I'm gonna work as a operation manager for one of the biggest music label in the world, and for me is a big milestone in my career path. And So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Dealing with data, a lot of data, because like it's a big organization, so it crunches so much information. And um, then I will go to a lot of concerts because Paris offers like a wide uh, plateau of like different concerts and experiences. And and I'm gonna be back sometimes just to
That sounds
check on you
very
guys.
that sounds very exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time here. Um, Something I'm very curious about, since you know so much about data and technology and how it's affecting our world today, is what is freedom of data? How do you define the freedom of data? And what role does the new age of technology play in securing our privacy and our control over this data that we choose to give permissions randomly these days? We click on allow anytime we open a browser. We click on I agree to terms and conditions, and we don't even read. We don't even know what kind of permissions these apps that we install on our phone have over us.
This is a very interesting topic, and it's also something I'm really close to. It's something I somehow try to do some activism, like on a very low level, like with people I know, trying to help them understand. Because for a long time, we didn't consider like the impact that our data uh, have on the world. But nowadays, it's something like we can't avoid thinking about. It's a very serious matter, and it actually already changed and is changing the world. So I think that is a perfect example on what data can do uh, and how can be so dangerous to not be aware of our privacy, um, because then it's about privacy. The freedom in data world is about privacy. When you don't have privacy, it means like your data can be collected by anybody and used that like in any possible way. There are countries in the world, like the UAE, for example, in which you have like laws like very similar to the European GDPR. That is the law for for data in Europe, and but then there are no sanctions if you don't respect this law. The reason
Okay.
why in the Emirates, like you receive so many marketing calls and messages
And
and
emails.
yeah, very aggressive. They are very polite, but aggressive in the sense like a lot of
It's
marketing,
called aggressive marketing.
aggressive
Yeah.
marketing. So it's fundamental. Like there is something happened a few years ago during the American elections. Something probably everybody knows, like the huge scandal of Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
So Cambridge Analytica was like this company basically crunching data for doing consultancy service on data, mainly for political organizations like political parties in the world. And they were basically using data to lead political marketing. That is not, it's something normal. We
Yeah.
always did that, also before internet. Of course, like you try to convince everybody that your idea is the best, and you use every possible tool. But for the scandal of Cambridge Analytica, the big problem is that the data Cambridge Analytica was using were coming from a Facebook apps. So you know, on Facebook you can use the games built in Facebook, like what kind of vegetable are you, or that
Yeah.
kind of like jokes. And but actually, when you're using that apps, you are giving a lot of permissions, and you're not giving only your data, but in that specific case, you were like also allowing the app to access the data of your friends. So imagine 100,000 people downloading an app like that, like using an app like that. It's a very likely amount. Like 100,000 people is nothing if you think that like they have billions of
They
users.
have 2 billion maybe.
So every person has like 1,000 friends. So it's 100,000 per 1,000. 100,000 per 1,000 it means like 100 million people's data. So that's when you have like big data.
A data breach.
And with big data, what you can do is like especially nowadays with AI, is getting easier and easier. You can predict what people want. Like actually, I don't remember exactly, but with like 10 likes on Facebook, 10 reactions to posts, it's possible to profile you and exactly know if you are a male or a female, if you like certain topics, what is your lifestyle, what you do, what you like. So basically, like to understand who you are. And of course, this is possible also in politics. So
Yeah.
when I know what you do, what you like, I will target you with custom advertisement. And that's exactly what they do for products. But when it comes to products, it's not a big issue. Like you're gonna just spend more money, consume more. That of course like is bad, but it it's kind of okay. Like it's not harmful if not for your wallet.
Yeah.
When it comes to politics, is much more sensitive. So especially when you have fake news, because you can vehiculate like fake news very easily, and there are like proof that like some other governments used the same process of like getting data and targeting people to target them with fake news and convince them like about like conspiracy theories or other kind of things. So going back to Cambridge Analytica, what happened is that the data Cambridge Analytica was using, they didn't have the right to use. So it means like people didn't give the consent to sell this data to a third party, in this case, Cambridge Analytica. So basically, the whole campaign of some of the political parties in the US were led through data that didn't have any permission to be used. And this is like a violation of privacy.
For sure.
So with data, who owns the data nowadays? So the big techs, basically, they have the power because they can know what people want. They can anticipate what people will do. And that's a very serious matter. It's really dangerous.
For sure. I mean, it's very frightening. Sounds very frightening, honestly. What kind of tips can you give people who are watching or listening to us right now in order to protect themselves from this kind of scenario where their data is used against them, whether politically or otherwise? Like maybe 3 tips, if you may.
So for sure, there are like different ways of protecting ourselves and be more careful about data. One of them is very easy and is using a VPN. Never use like a free VPN because like if they are free, is because on the internet like there is this thing of if you're using something for free, you are the product. So probably they are selling your data to someone else. So you're using a VPN maybe just to access, I don't know, other countries' content, but they are then selling your data to third parties.
And they can do that.
You probably accept it in the privacy policy. The problem is that the privacy policy is so long everywhere for every website. Like I don't know how many websites we surf every day, but if you start like reading all the privacy policies of all the websites you visit, you will probably spend most of your time reading privacy policies.
True.
So in your browser, for example, so the VPN is the first advice. The second, a paid VPN, not a free one. The second is to use a restrictive data policy on your browsers, like in Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox and all the other browsers. You can set how much you want the browser to be restrictive on data, so to accept or not automatically third-party cookies. Third-party cookies is like cookies on the website that are not just stored on the actual website, but there are like third parties, organization involved on that. For example, when you go to a blog on anything and any website and there is like share on Facebook, that's a tracker. So Facebook, although you're not on Facebook, they can get your data. They can know that you, user, have been to that website. There are also some kind of extensions for your browser to use, like for example, Ghostery or AdBlock Plus or the ad blockers. You must be careful with your blockers because sometimes you can be banned by some website. It happened to me with YouTube. I lost one of my accounts because of
Wow.
ad blockers. That was really bad because I had like 10 years of playlist, but it's fine. But anyway, there are extensions also for the browsers. So there are a bunch of things we can do. There are a
Okay.
bunch of things.
Okay.
Delete your cookies, and like always, like take your time, like to read the minimum acceptable for the cookie notice on the website. These are just like first small steps. There is a very interesting document about privacy and about like being incognito in the web. That should be a right. Everybody should be granted to access the web in a incognito way, not incognito mode, but like anonymously. I don't remember in this moment the name of this manifesto, but it's plenty on the internet, and it's important like to take some time just to understand the topic, go into that, and understand like why our data are so important nowadays and why we should protect them.
I was recently reading about Web 3.0 and how they plan to use blockchain in storing data. Is that something beneficial or helpful for people to not worry about their data being used maliciously?
For sure, blockchain is something really nice, especially for security. At the end of the day, blockchain is about encryption. The whole internet works with encryption, and also that one is a serious matter because the day in which we will be able to encrypt anything, like in a possible scenario, the whole internet will crash probably. Like
Why?
because there will be no more, basically like all the communication system. Like when you visit a website, you see on the address bar, like the link is always HTTPS. Some websites are HTTP.
Yeah, not
So
secured.
exactly, it's not secure because it's not encrypted. So everything is based on encryption. Like your bank transaction are based on encryption. The passwords, password storing is based on encryption. Your mobile wallet, like if you have a wallet like with Bitcoins, for example, is based on encryption. Bitcoin itself is based on a blockchain, so it's based on encryption. Blockchain is just a very efficient way to do encryption.
Where the verification is done by separate parties, or
Exactly.
is that? Yeah.
So it means like there is like, let's say, a community worldwide.
Decentralized kind of.
Yeah. So like the 50% of community plus one must approve the transaction to make a piece of data part of the blockchain. So you have a lot of blocks in the chain, a lot of rings, and you need the approval of the 50 plus 1%. And this is just one of the possible blockchains. There are different that are like proof of stake, proof of work, and but basically this is the concept. So and it's almost impossible to make it fail because you can't have like the 50 plus 1% is just impossible. And so yeah, blockchain plays a very significant role, but I will say it will never be enough. Like people have to be conscious, and we will always leave some data, always. It's also a trade. Like if you want to have everything for free, every service for free, you have to exchange data. It's not bad to accept cookies in general. It's not bad to leave some data. We just have to be mindful. And there is another tip that I would really like to give to the people, and is that we should try to, you were saying decentralize. Like blockchain, what it does is decentralize things. And nowadays we say a lot about like decentralization. And actually, I really hope this is gonna be the way because it's the most like secure way of storing data. But when it comes also to your personal decentralization of services, so it's very important to choose products like phones, especially laptops and systems you use. For example, you have like Google Suite, or you can use the Apple Apple Suite, or you can use like a Microsoft Suite, for example, your email using Microsoft 365 or using the Google Suite or using a lot of different tools. What I do recommend is like to try to um, start leaving the big techs. So instead of having everything on Google, of course you need to be on Google, because if you have an Android phone, for example, you're
Yeah.
gonna be on Google. But it's important to have like alternative ways of using services. There are a lot of like um, services that are not owned by big tech and that are very clear on their privacy policy. For example, Proton Mail is a mail service that is fully encrypted, and it respects the privacy of the users, like their core value and their core business is like selling something that respects your privacy.
Yeah.
The same, for example, for the photos. Everybody nowadays uses like a Google Photo or Apple Photo, but both of them are not good privacy-wise. Google Photo, especially, had been flagged because they use AI algorithm to analyze all your pictures. So what happened with Google Photo, for example, is that there was a quite huge scandal because a father that took pictures of his little son, a baby, naked, to send them to the doctor because he had like some, pimples or whatever. Um, he got banned from his Google account first, and second, Google now has this policy that if the AI of Google like catch some picture of pedophile pictures on your phone, like on your Google Photo, they're gonna automatically send to the authorities, like to signal them to the authorities. And that's of course like it's great that we try to contain the phenomenon. And I say contain because unfortunately, with internet, for how is made internet, it's a very challenging thing. But like crimes in general, crimes are impossible just to fully
Contain.
contain. So it's good that we do that, but we can't do it at the price of the privacy of people. It's not something acceptable that a father being signaled to the police for something like that. Imagine how he felt. Like, just put aside all the things about like I lost my accounts, I lost the access to my services. That like is a big issue because of course like you have your life on these services, but at the same time, the biggest issue is that like they touch your intimacy.
Yeah.
And another big thing that happened with Apple Photo is that apparently the photo that you delete from Apple Photo from the cloud are not deleted for real. So when you delete a picture, you want it to disappear forever.
Yeah.
They go in the trash bin, of course, and after 30 days or something like that, they are fully deleted permanently. That's what they say.
From your phone.
Theoretically, also from their servers. They should not stay on their server because
Yeah.
you want it to be deleted. You are the owner of the content. That content owns, like it is owned by you. But apparently there was a bug after they fixed something in Apple Photo, and some users like had the deleted pictures appearing again. So this means technically that these pictures are somewhere, because if they are deleted permanently, they can't just come back
Of course
at a
not.
certain point. So this is something really serious,
Yeah.
because when you delete a picture, you want it to be
You
deleted
expect
forever.
it to be gone, yeah.
It can be a very private, intimate picture. We photograph everything nowadays. So it's against any privacy value to like tell people we're gonna delete something and then not deleting, and it's against any privacy value to analyze all the picture of someone. It's something very intimate again.
Of course. Speaking of AI, I wanted to ask you, how is AI influencing today's wars, and how is it being used by governments in a malicious way? Do you have any idea on how it's currently being used in modern warfare, and how important it is in implementing these wars for certain governments?
I'm not a super expert of wars, but I have some like information. Like I read a lot about AI. Of course, like it's the hot topic of this period, and it's gonna be for the next few years. That's really what is gonna help in the transition to a Web 3.0. It's gonna help us like in everyday life and in many things, in many tasks. It's gonna make us more free for a certain point of view and less free for other points of view. And for sure, war is one of the things that will be really affected, is already being affected by AI. One example are, for example, drones, like drones driven by AI, and it's like more about ethic and about how can an artificial intelligence decide who dies.
Yeah, yeah.
Also because it's very well known that AIs, since they are trained on human data, they are biased. So, for example, there were some studies identifying how, if I'm not wrong, the US police was using somewhere in the US, like they were using AI facial recognition, and it was failing, let's say, when it comes to colored people.
Yeah,
So it's biased.
of
It's
course.
biased because it's trained on humans' data, and humans, unfortunately, are racist. Some of humans are racist
And biased.
and biased. So, of course, AI is biased. So, how safe is, in terms of freedom, in terms of anything, like how safe is to give an AI the choice of killing someone? And then also like regarding war, but not all in war, but more like intelligence. It's very well known that all the states in the world, in the West, in the East, all Arab countries, African countries, whoever, they are using AI and softwares in general, like spywares, viruses, to track people that, of course, they have an interest to track. It's not something that actually, let's say, affect people, normal people, every day. But it can be very harmful when it comes like to political refugees, for example, or journalists or politicians. There are many cases of journalists killed by some governments because they had their phones infected with spywares, or because their faces were recognized by AI systems for security, and then, of course, like found and killed. So, of course, like anything, like a gun is meant to defend yourself, but can be used also to kill someone.
True.
A lot of the products that we have in our houses can be used to kill someone, also if they are not meant to be used in that way. Just a hammer, for example. So, of course, like as any tool, AI is a tool. There can be some bad and some goods. It really depends on each state to choose how to use AI in a correct and a ethical way.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you completely. And I wanted to thank you, Alessandro, for
Thank you,
being my
Bashar.
guest tonight. I'm sure we can go more into detail if we wanted to for hours and hours on end about these topics. Everything you talked about is very interesting. And to be honest, you're one of the most intelligent people I've met. So I'm sure we can go way more deep if we wanted to for this conversation. But for the sake of time, I want to say thank you for everyone who was listening and everyone who's watching us on YouTube. Thank you so much, and we look forward to welcoming you and seeing you again in our next episodes. So stay tuned for more episodes to come from the Friendly Palestinian. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.